It's kind of easy to look at a map today, all those neat borders, and just assume things were always like that.
Right. But they really weren't.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. For most of human history, this idea that everyone in one place should share the same culture and want to rule themselves, that would have sounded, well, pretty strange.
Totally foreign. You look at empires like the Ottoman or the Mongol Empire,
Yes.
vast areas, so many different peoples, languages, traditions, all under one ruler. Completely different picture.
So what we're really digging into today is nationalism. It's relatively new, historically speaking, really kicking off around the 18th century, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, and incredibly powerful. It's that feeling of common identity built on things like language, religion, social customs, and crucially, the desire for your own territory, for self-rule.
And this wasn't just pulled out of thin air. So in this deep dive, we're exploring that whole revolutionary era, roughly 1750 to 1900. We'll see how nationalism mixed with existing political discontent and these big new ideas from the Enlightenment really stirred things up globally.
Yeah, it's quite a journey. We'll hit the big ones first, the American and French revolutions, then Haiti, which is such a pivotal story, and of course, the Latin American independence movement.
It wasn't just revolutions, right?
Exactly. We'll also look at other nationalist movements, maybe less explosive, but still important. I think the Philippines, New Zealand, Puerto Rico, and then the unifications, Germany and Italy coming together.
And finishing up with the complexities in the Balkans and within the Ottoman Empire itself, trying to manage all this.
It's a lot, but it's all interconnected.
Okay, so let's start with this rise of nationalism itself. It's just so key to get this link between a specific culture and the right to self-rule. That was a huge shift in thinking.
A profound departure, really. And what's interesting is how some existing states actually tried to harness this rising tide, to use nationalism to unify their own diverse populations.
How did they do that?
Well, things like pushing specific narratives in schools, creating national holidays or rituals, even using things like military conscription to try and build a shared sense of purpose.
But that sometimes went spectacularly wrong, didn't it? Like, you mentioned Russia trying to impose the Russian language everywhere.
Precisely. In places like Ukraine, Poland, Finland,
Mhm.
they already had their own strong languages, their own cultures. Forcing Russian on them didn't create Russians. If anything, it just solidified their own national identities. It fueled counternationalism.
Right. It kind of amplified the very thing they were trying to erase, a real backfire effect.
Yeah, a classic example of how forced assimilation can strengthen resistance.
Okay, so nationalism is bubbling up. But alongside that, there's also just plain old political dissent, right? People being unhappy with kings and emperors. That's not exactly new.
Not at all. That's a constant, really.
Yeah.
Drumbling about rulers, resisting taxes. It's always been there.
And we saw examples even before this period, like tax rebellions in the Safavid Empire.
Or the Wahhabi movement in the Ottoman Empire, challenging religious practices and implicitly authority. These weren't necessarily full-blown revolutions aiming for a new nation in the way we're discussing, but they definitely show that resistance to authority was a long-standing thing. It created an environment where bigger changes could happen.
And then the third ingredient, the Enlightenment. These really radical new ways of thinking about how society should even be organized.
Exactly. This intellectual explosion.
What?
Thinkers were putting forward ideas that directly question the whole basis of monarchy and empire.
Like popular sovereignty.
Yes, that the power, the ultimate authority, actually rests with the people, not the king, not the emperor.
Yeah.
And then democracy, people participating, having representation.
And liberalism too, right? Ideas about individual rights, limited government.
Uh-huh. Freedom, rights, the idea of a government that serves the people, not the other way around. These ideas provided a whole new language, a new justification for challenging the old order.
Okay, so you've got this potent mix. Rising nationalism, this underlying dissent, and these powerful Enlightenment ideas. And then, bam, revolutions start popping off, especially around the Atlantic. Let's start with the American one, 1776.
Right. And it's easy to forget. The British colonies in North America had actually developed quite a bit of independence already, just because they were so far away.
Yeah, distance matters. London wasn't exactly micromanaging day-to-day life.
Not initially. But then came the 7 Years' War, or the French and Indian War over there. Britain won, but ended up with massive debts.
Ah, the money problem. So they looked to the colonies.
Exactly, new taxes. And the colonists felt this wasn't just about money, it was about their freedoms, their autonomy being eroded. Plus, they'd been reading those Enlightenment thinkers.
No taxation without representation.
That's the cry, isn't it? And you see those Enlightenment ideals woven right into the Declaration of Independence, popular sovereignty, natural rights, the social contract idea. It's all there.
And crucially, they won.
They did.
Yeah.
Which was huge. It sent a message across the world. You can overthrow a colonial power. You can set up a republic. It was a massive inspiration.
And that inspiration flows pretty directly to France, doesn't it? Just a few years later, 1789.
It really does. You had French soldiers who'd fought in America coming home full of these democratic ideas. They started looking at their own king, Louis XVI, differently.
And he had his own debt problems too, right? From wars, including helping the Americans.
Ooh, irony, yes. So when Louis tried to consolidate power to fix the finances, it was the spark. The monarchy gets overthrown, a republic is declared. Another massive upheaval.
And they have their own big document too, the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, more Enlightenment ideas.
Absolutely. Natural rights, the nation being sovereign, very similar themes adapted for France.
Then Haiti, starting 1791. This one feels different, somehow even more radical.
It is remarkable. Haiti Saint-Domingue, as it was called, was France's richest colony. Insanely profitable, but built entirely on the backs of a huge enslaved black population.
And the French Revolution's own talk of liberty, equality, fraternity, that must have sounded, well, hypocritical, but also maybe inspiring to people held in bondage there.
Hugely inspiring and deeply hypocritical on France's part. The enslaved people heard those words and thought, well, what about us? Under Toussaint Louverture's incredible leadership, they rose up.
And they won against the French army.
Against the odds, they defeated the French. They established the Second Republic in the Western Hemisphere, and crucially, the first free black republic anywhere. Its significance is just immense, often overlooked.
Absolutely. And the wave continues, right? Into Latin America, early 19th century, same ingredients again.
Pretty much. Enlightenment ideas spreading and deep resentment building up against Spanish and Portuguese control, which had actually been tightening.
And friction within the colonial society itself.
Yes, particularly with the Creoles, people of European descent born in the Americas. They were often wealthy and educated, but shut out of the top jobs, which went to the peninsula areas, those born in Spain or Portugal.
So they felt like second-class citizens in their own lands.
Exactly. They had the economic power, often, but
Right.
not the political power. And then Napoleon gives them an opening.
How so?
He invades Spain in 1808, puts his brother on the throne. Suddenly, the crown's authority in the colonies is massively weakened. It creates this power vacuum, this perfect moment to push for independence.
Enter figures like Simon Bolivar.
The liberator, yes. A Creole himself, deeply influenced by the Enlightenment. He writes his letter from Jamaica, arguing for popular sovereignty, self-rule. And he tries, with some success, to unite different groups, Creoles, mestizos, even indigenous peoples, and formerly enslaved people at times against Spain.
A tough coalition to build, I imagine.
Incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
But his vision and military campaigns were key in the end result, a whole slew of independent republics across Central and South America. The map changes dramatically.
Okay, so those are the big continent-shaking revolutions. But you mentioned nationalism also driving movements that weren't necessarily about immediate total independence, like in the Philippines.
Right. Under Spain, you had that familiar colonial hierarchy. But some wealthier Filipinos, Creoles, and mestizos got to study in Europe.
And they picked up on these nationalist and Enlightenment ideas floating around there.
Exactly. They came back, started writing, publishing initially more focused on demanding reforms, more rights within the Spanish system, not necessarily calling for a complete break at first.
But the Spanish authorities saw where it might lead.
They did. They saw the nationalism bubbling under the surface and cracked down, suppressed the movement, which, in the long run, probably just fueled the desire for actual independence later on.
And in New Zealand, a different dynamic with the British and the Maori.
Yeah, the British annexed New Zealand in 1840, and their dominance grew. The Maori population, understandably, resisted this foreign rule.
Did they manage to unite against the British?
To some extent, yes. Different Maori tribes did come together to fight back in what became known as the New Zealand Wars. But ultimately, the British military power was too strong, and the resistance was suppressed by the 1870s. Still, a clear example of indigenous nationalism resisting colonial power.
And then there are powerful individuals like Lola Rodriguez de Tio in Puerto Rico, using words as weapons.
She's fascinating. A poet, yes, but also a feminist, a political activist. She wrote these fiercely patriotic, revolutionary lyrics for La Borinqueña, Puerto Rico's anthem, explicitly calling for liberation from Spain.
So she wasn't just writing pretty verses.
Not at all. She was advocating for women's rights too, pushing boundaries. and she paid a price, exiled multiple times for her activism. But she remained this potent symbol of resistance and the desire for self-determination.
Now, shifting focus slightly, nationalism wasn't just about breaking away from empires. Sometimes it brought people together, right? Like in Germany and Italy.
Absolutely. Before the mid-19th century, Germany and Italy were geographical expressions, really. Just collections of separate kingdoms, duchies,
Yeah,
city-states,
real patchwork.
a total patchwork.
Yeah.
But you had this growing feeling of shared Germanness or Italianness, fueled by language, culture, history, and sometimes, frankly, by shared opposition to external powers like France or Austria.
And leaders emerged who harnessed that feeling.
Key figures, yeah, like Bismarck in Prussia for Germany or Cavour and Garibaldi in Italy. They used a mix of, well, diplomacy, political maneuvering, and sometimes outright war, blood, and iron, as Bismarck put it, to pull these fragmented territories together into unified nation-states.
So nationalism as a unifier, creating larger countries.
Exactly, a different outcome, but driven by that same core idea of national identity demanding political expression.
Okay, now, the Balkans. This always feels like where things get incredibly complicated.
Oh yes, the Balkans are a tangle. You have numerous ethnic and religious groups, Serbs, Greeks, Bulgarians, Romanians, Albanians, and others, mostly living under the weakening Ottoman Empire, with the Austro-Hungarian Empire also looming large.
And they're all catching the nationalism bug, too.
Big time. Inspired by the Enlightenment, by romantic ideas about shared history and culture, each group starts to develop its own strong sense of national identity and a desire for its own independent state.
Which must have put them on a collision course with the Ottomans, and maybe with each other, too.
Both. It leads to constant revolts, wars throughout the 19th century. Greece gains independence early on, then Serbia, Romania, Bulgaria. The Ottoman Empire is steadily losing its European territory.
And you mentioned Serbian nationalism specifically playing a destabilizing role.
It did become particularly assertive, aiming to unite Serbs across different territories. And that ambition ultimately clashes with Austro-Hungarian interests, leading directly to that flashpoint moment, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo by a Bosnian Serb nationalist.
Which kicks off World War I. Wow.
Yeah. So Balkan nationalism is this double-edged sword. It's a force for liberation from empire, but also a source of intense conflict between the emerging nations themselves.
And finally, within the Ottoman Empire itself, they tried to counter all this fragmentation with Ottomanism. What was that exactly?
It was basically a last-ditch effort by the Ottoman government in the 19th century, a reformist idea to try and create a shared Ottoman identity that could unite all the different groups, Turks, Arabs, Greeks, Armenians, Slavs, everyone.
How are they going to do that?
The idea was to emphasize equality before the law, grant citizenship rights to all, regardless of ethnicity or religion, and foster loyalty to the empire itself, above loyalty to your specific ethnic group. They brought in reforms to education, law, the military, trying to modernize and centralize.
Did it work?
No, not really. It's too little, too late, perhaps. Many of the non-Turkish groups weren't buying it. They wanted self-rule, not just equality within an empire they increasingly saw as Turkish-dominated. And ethnic tensions just kept rising. So Ottomanism ultimately failed to hold the empire together.
So wrapping this all up, it's just crystal clear that this whole period, 1750 to 1900, was fundamentally transformative. You've got nationalism bursting onto the scene, people seriously questioning old authorities, and those Enlightenment ideas providing the intellectual firepower. It all just converged.
Absolutely. A perfect storm in many ways, igniting revolutions, redrawing maps, creating new nations, but
Also setting the stage for future problems.
Massively. Because when one group's national dream clashes with another's, or when creating a nation-state involves excluding or suppressing minorities, well, you sow the seeds for conflict down the line.
Yeah.
We see that playing out again and again.
So maybe a final thought for you listening at home. When you consider all these different faces of nationalism, we've talked about the unifying kind, the fragmenting kind, the revolutionary, the more gradual, what do you think are the really enduring legacies of this era? How does that period shape how we even think about national identity, about self-determination in our world right now?
Yeah, how do those forces from 200 years ago still echo today? Definitely something worth mulling over.